morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Living with S. I'm your host, Sharon Mundia, and we are at Swiss Lenana Mount Hotel. Now, today's conversation is all about renewables, renewable energy versus fossil fuels, and the impact that it has on us, on our daily lives, and more so on the world in the future. I've got 4 experts on today's panel. I did tell them that today's show you're going to have to go very slowly, slow down on the acronyms and break everything down, because I really do want to understand, and I think it's important that we all understand, because like we were saying before the cameras were rolling, this is really our problem. It's my problem, not something that's happening somewhere else that other people have to worry about. It's something that's affecting us today. So let me introduce my guests today. I have got Amayo Passy, who's the program officer at Society for International Development. I've also got Brian Odani, who is Africa Youth Initiative on Climate Change, the national coordinator. I have got a student. Her name is Miriam Vandenberg, who's the co-founder of Youth for Climate Kenya. And last but not least, I've got Omar Elmawi, right? Elmawi, who is the campaign coordinator at decolonize.org. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so ladies and gents, where do we start? Why don't we start by just defining the basics? We're going to assume that we're starting from scratch, and so this is a lesson. So what is renewable energy? What makes up renewable energy, and why is it of importance to us? Who wants to take that? Who wants to take that one?
I think the phrase says ladies first, yeah?
Ladies first?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'll just jump in then. Well, renewable energies are basically energy that is generated from renewable sources, like clean sources. So we're thinking solar, we're thinking wind. Now geothermal and hydro has also been classified as renewable energy.
Okay.
And it's called renewable because it is said that wind will always be there, the sun will always be there, it doesn't get consumed. Mm-hmm. So hence renewable energy. So energy from clean sources.
Sun, wind, water, right? And inversely, what makes up fossil fuels, and why is it important that we start to shift gears towards more renewable energies rather than fossil fuels?
Fossil fuel will be the opposite of renewables, yeah? For renewables, it's the sources that cannot be depleted, so they'll always be there, like the sun, the wind, geothermal, and others. But fossil fuels now will be the sources that are used which can be depleted or they can end. For example, oil and gas, coal. So these resources, once you keep using them, yeah, they don't they replenish at some point. You're going to reach a point where you've used all of it, and because it takes so many years, if you look at how long it takes for coal to generate, just the process, it takes millions of years. So by the time you're done with burning it, you won't definitely have more of it to continue using it. That's one of the side, but the other side is also the fact that once you start utilizing it for either energy or electricity, it generates a lot of effects that people are worried about. One of those effects is from the emissions. You have the carbon dioxide, which is one of the biggest component of climate change, being a greenhouse gas. Also, you're talking about some other effects because the coal itself, it's mixed with things like nitrogen and sulfur and other things. And these elements, once they are burnt, they come out as sulfur oxide, as nitrogen oxide. And we've had experts looking at it. For example, in a case here in Kenya, the proposed Lamu coal plant, they've looked at it and they've said at the period of when that coal plant, the lifetime of each, 25 years, they are forecasting, these are conservative figures, that about 1,600 people are going to lose their life prematurely out of a coal plant. And that's just being conservative. And also looking at even how far and wide those emissions will go. It's not just going to affect Lamu, but it's going to go into other areas which is in the vicinity of Lamu.
Right. So to me it sounds obvious, because it's finite and toxic and contributes to global warming. We should just be using renewable energy. So why aren't we doing that? What is the fight about? where does that fight come from? Is it, if you were to explain it, why are people resistant to shifting gear and using more renewables?
About shifting from fossil fuels to renewable, actually I can't say it's just a matter of using what's available, and about the fossil fuels. Actually, what can I say? Is it about money or what? But the thing is, we really need to shift from fossil fuel to renewable energy, as Omar has just said. Fossil fuels, most of us do not know the science behind it, or maybe they do. They do know,
okay.
yeah, but they don't want to agree to it.
Yeah, but I would argue that the corporate giants, the people in the private sector, absolutely understand this. They have access to scientists, and I'm sure they're well aware of what the fumes do, how it affects us, our children, the environment. So is it that it's more expensive to use renewable energy? Could that be one of the issues? Because I couldn't imagine that ignorance is something that these corporates could claim, that we didn't know. Ozone layer? Is that wow, I had no idea. So is it more expensive to tap into the renewable energy sources?
Actually, tapping into renewable energy sources is even more cheaper than using the fossil fuels. Let's say, like right now, the amount of a solar panel is even cheaper, depending on the watt you need, and we all have the sun for free. So tapping into renewable energy is even easier. Like right now, we have the Lake Turkana wind power plant. Is even cheaper. You just buy the panels, and even the largest in Africa so far. So you just buy the panel, the turbines, you place them there. Wind is a free-flowing air, so it will automatically run the turbines. So it's even cheaper than the fossil fuels. You have to put in the machines to tap in this energy, which unlikely is expensive than the renewable energy.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So actually, my assumption is that people are resistant to it, but maybe they're not. What are the current statistics when it comes to countries that are shifting gears and moving more towards renewable energies? Would you have those stats for us? Maybe you could take us through that.
Statistics on countries. Okay, maybe let me just start from why we need to shift.
Okay.
And you said something very interesting about, is it that we don't know? Is this something that is new, like you don't know about the ozone layer or something?
Yeah.
This is something that has been known for centuries. During the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, people are already talking about the toxic effects of extracting and exploiting fossil fuels, and also fossil fuels are also known as hydrocarbons back then. So this is something that has been known. But there's a lot of money in the fossil fuel industry. I mean, it goes without saying. In the 20th century, development was built on fossil fuels. Extraction of oil, extraction of gas, extraction of coal. But now we're living in the 21st century, which has proven to be a century of limits. And these limits include limits on greenhouse gas emissions. And so now globally, people have realized that we're living in a world of limits, and if we do not do something about it now, the future implications will be hard. So you find developed countries now shifting away from using the dirty fossil fuels, such as coal, and even to an extent the extraction of oil, gas, and coal. The funny thing that brings in the aspect of Africa and even Kenya is that there seems to be a shift from developing them there and exporting them down to Africa that has for a long decade not had these dirty fuels. So for example, the Lamu coal power plant would have been the very first in East Africa. So why does it seem like they're shifting away but moving it down to the countries that have never developed these before? So globally, the shift is happening. They do realize, and now you hear China is leading in the production of solar panels, whereas China is a heavily polluted nation. You have the Germans who are doing very well in renewable energy. You have Norway that was built on the extraction of oil and gas, but now is cited as one of the most developed, cleanest countries in the world. So it's trickling down to us, and that's why it's a very important issue for us to look at globally, to regionally, to nationally.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So globally, is the general consensus that yes, we ought to be shifting to renewable energies, and we are actually making moves towards that? Are we stepping towards that direction on a global, from a global sense?
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Like you look at Europe, they're doing a lot of work on promoting renewable energy and shifting to more greener economies.
Yeah.
And when this conversation came up, that's when the US president had just joined in, and he decided, we're moving out of the Paris Agreement because it would not benefit us as Americans. We've grown and developed on coal and oil. So if you're telling us that now we need to shift, we're going to be running at a loss. So for me, I see it, or rather I assume that it's a political economy question. The amount of money that goes into burning fossil fuels, extracting is huge, and it would be a huge loss for the big players in the market.
Talking on that, actually as Kenyans, you're supposed to be very happy concerning the directive which was given by the president. By 2020, we are supposed to be at 100% renewable energy. And we are we are working towards that. Like right now, I can say Kenya is 9th globally in terms of geothermal. So we are benefiting from geothermal. We produce a lot of watts, around 350 watts from geothermal, and we have geothermal. So to achieve that worldwide, we begin with us. Actually, it's normally said, think globally, act locally. So right now we are working, we are acting locally, and we are working towards that. By 2020, we believe we are supposed to be at 100%.
Where are we now?
And again,
right
now we are at 70% renewable energy with 60% population we this kind of renewable energy. Renewable energy, we believe the hydroelectric power, which is we benefit from geothermal, we get from wind. Yeah, so we are good.
So just to be clear, when you say we're aiming to be at 100% renewable energy, does that mean for all our electricity and maybe heat that we'll be sourcing it from there? Or what do you mean when you say we're at 100% renewable energy? It means what for the country?
That is a statement which President gave, and I believe we are really working towards that. With this, we can only achieve it when we are, all the investors who are investing in the energy sector, we're supposed to, give them like a directive. You're supposed to invest in renewable energy, and not in fossil fuel and produced energy. So with that directive, when the president has talked, he's the boss in the country. So whichever the way, we have to follow. So we have to live towards that. So that's why actually we are not going for the strike. We are going for the march for the renewable energy. So when you're marching, when you're striking, you try to, the term strike. And then when you're going for a march, we are not going for a war, but we're just going to remind our president that you had committed yourself here.
But I'm still trying to understand what that means. Does that mean that companies, manufacturing companies also have to invest in solar or wind sources of energy, or more renewable energies? Maybe you could
I think it's important as a background to understand that fossil fuels, especially coal, has had a big role in terms of taking many countries into developed place. But that was a point when we had not discovered all these resources that we have, wind and others. And for them, they've realized that there are a lot of consequences that the population goes through. while companies are making a lot of money, and we know that companies are solely driven by profit, but we've also seen that, you know, while they're making a lot of money, there are people who are suffering from these consequences out of these projects. We've seen that most of these projects are taken into communities that don't have someone to defend them. They're more of like marginalized communities, and so we've realized that if these companies were to bear the cost of all these impacts and including health, environmental, marine, and other impacts that are shifting to their communities. So if they were to put a figure to the externalities that they're taking to the community, then you will see that fossil fuels don't make sense. It becomes expensive. And two, also now we're at a point where it's a technological phase, and we've really made strides in understanding how renewables work. So it's not just that renewables don't have environmental or health impacts, but also now they're becoming competitive to fossil fuels. You're seeing countries like Zambia are now getting tenders for solar to about 4 Kenya shillings a kilowatt hour, which is actually cheaper than what we are going to pay for the coal plant here in Lamu. We are seeing that places like in the Middle East, they're getting tenders for about 2 shillings a kilowatt hour, which is cheaper than what you're paying for fossil fuels. So we're not just arguing that we want renewables, but we're also saying renewables make an economic sense because at the end of the day, these contracts that the government signs with the independent power producers are long-term contracts. They are contracts for up to 25 years. And if we are being honest that we are going to be 100% renewable energy sufficient by next year, then we can't say we are moving towards that direction if we are signing contracts of fossil fuels.
Right, exactly.